It is 11 o'clock at night. You are standing in your kitchen in the dark, watching a small rotating light through a glass door. The microwave hums. You are not hungry. Not really. You ate dinner 3 hours ago, but something pulled you out of bed, walked you down the hallway, and now here you are, waiting. You don't question it. It feels normal. It feels in some way you can't explain necessary. There is a moment in human history, scientists argue about exactly when it happened, but it happened where a single decision changed the shape of the human skull, changed the size of the human gut, changed the wiring of the human brain in ways we are still living with today. You are the result of that decision, and that same decision is quietly making you sick. The story doesn't start in the kitchen. It doesn't start with a recipe, or a flame you deliberately made, or any conscious intention at all. It starts at the edge of a wildfire, roughly 1 million years ago, on a stretch of open land in what is now East Africa, and it starts with a smell. Picture a hominin standing at the boundary where the scorched earth begins. Not quite you, not quite anything you'd recognize as human, not at first glance. The jaw juts forward, built for grinding. Wide, heavy, anchored to skull muscles so thick they reach the top of the cranium like a helmet strap. This is Homo erectus, upright, bipedal, intelligent in ways we are still trying to measure. But the brain inside that sloped skull is roughly 2/3 the size of yours. The fire passed through this area yesterday. Whatever caused it, lightning, a volcanic vent, a dry season that turned the grass to tinder, it is gone now. What remains is blackened ground, smoke still rising in thin threads, and a smell unlike anything that existed in the world before fire. Roasted meat. An antelope, or something like it, caught in the blaze. The carcass is still there at the edge of the burn line, and this hominin, this ancestor of yours, is standing at the boundary between instinct and something new, caught between two signals firing at the same time. The first signal is fear. Fire kills. Everything that moves and breathes has learned this over hundreds of millions of years. The smell of smoke is a signal that means run. The heat radiating off the ground means danger. Every older part of this brain is screaming to back away. The second signal is something the brain has no name for yet. It is the smell of fat and protein that has been chemically transformed by heat. Compounds called Maillard reaction products, the same ones that make bread smell like bread and coffee smell like coffee. The olfactory system has no category for this, but the reward circuitry fires anyway, because dense calories are dense calories, and the brain knows what dense calories mean. Survival. This hominin approaches, slowly watching the remaining embers, body low. It picks up a piece of the roasted carcass, and it eats. Here's the part that gets strange. That meal, that single accidental meal at the edge of a wildfire, may be the most consequential thing any individual of our lineage ever did. Not because it was intentional, not because anyone understood what was happening, but because of what cooked food does to a body that has only ever eaten raw food, and what it would eventually do, over hundreds of thousands of years, to the species that kept returning to the fire. Richard Wrangham is a primatologist at Harvard. He has spent decades studying the relationship between food, energy, and the evolution of the human brain. His central argument, laid out in his 2009 book Catching Fire, is straightforward, and once you hear it, you cannot unhear it. Cooking made us human. Not in a metaphorical sense. Not cooking civilized us, or cooking brought us together around the table. Literally, biologically. The act of applying heat to food before eating it changed the physical structure of the human body, and specifically the human brain, in ways that no other dietary shift could have produced. Here is why. When you eat raw food, raw tubers, raw meat, raw nuts, your digestive system has to do an enormous amount of work to extract usable calories from it. Plant cell walls are tough. Proteins are tightly folded. The bioavailability of raw food, meaning the percentage of its calories your body can actually use, is significantly lower than the same food after it has been cooked. It denatures proteins, unfolding them so digestive enzymes can reach them. It gelatinizes starches, making them immediately available. Rachel Carmody, a researcher who worked with Wrangham at Harvard, demonstrated this in a 2011 study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Mites fed cooked food gained significantly more body mass than mice fed raw food on identical caloric intake. Same food, same calories on paper, but cooked food delivered more of those calories to the body. The difference was not small. Now scale that up to a hominin who eats every day for a lifetime. Our closest living relative, the chimpanzee, spends roughly 6 hours a day chewing. 6 hours. The jaw muscles of a chimp are among the most powerful, relative to body size, of any primate. They have to be. Raw food is work. A chimp's entire day is organized around the caloric math of eating enough raw vegetation and fruit to survive, with very little surplus left over. Humans spend approximately 1 hour a day chewing. That gap, 5 hours of freed time and freed energy, is where the human brain was built. The mechanism is called the expensive tissue hypothesis, proposed by Leslie Aiello and Peter Wheeler in 1995. The brain is metabolically expensive. Yours right now is consuming roughly 20% of your total body energy, despite making up only 2% of your body weight. That ratio is extraordinary in the animal kingdom. Most mammals cannot afford it. To grow a brain this large, something else had to shrink. That something was the gut. Human intestines are significantly smaller, relative to body size, than you would predict for a primate of our size. The gut is also metabolically expensive tissue. As cooking increased the efficiency of caloric extraction, the selection pressure for a massive digestive system relaxed. A smaller gut was sufficient, and the energy budget that gut had been consuming was redirected over hundreds of thousands of years of evolution to neural tissue. Chris Organ and colleagues in another 2011 PNAS study mapped the reduction in jaw muscle mass in Homo erectus against the estimated timeline of cooking onset. The correlation was precise. The skull changed. The jaw shrank. The brain case expanded. The body was reorganizing itself around the assumption that food would arrive pre-processed, pre-softened, pre-broken down by fire. But it gets darker. Because when the body reorganizes itself around an assumption, it becomes dependent on that assumption. The digestive system of a modern human is not the digestive system of a raw food primate. It is the digestive system of a species that has been cooking for, at minimum, several 100,000 years, and possibly much longer. Our gut biome, our enzyme production, our intestinal length, all of it calibrated for cooked food. You are not built to eat raw, you are built to eat processed. The fire is built into you. Here is where the story pivots. For most of human history, processed food meant food that had been cooked. That was the only processing available. You killed something, or you dug something up and you held it over a fire. The transformation was real, chemically, nutritionally, but it was limited. Roasted meat is still meat. Cooked tubers are still tubers. The caloric density, while higher than raw equivalents, was bounded by what the original food contained. Then, very recently, in the last 200 years, which is nothing on an evolutionary timescale, the food processing industry discovered something. The same signals that made cooked food rewarding to the ancient brain could be engineered, amplified, and optimized, not just preserved by heat, but constructed from the ground up to hit every reward circuit simultaneously. Fat, salt, sugar, crunch, rapid oral dissolution. These are not random preferences. Each one maps to a specific survival signal in the ancient brain. Fat means caloric density. In a world where starvation was always a few days away, fat was the most efficient fuel available. The brain learned to reward its consumption heavily. Salt means electrolyte replenishment. Humans lose salt through sweat. In an environment without processed salt, sodium was genuinely scarce and genuinely necessary. The craving for it was protective. Sugar means immediate energy, fast glucose for a brain and body under physical stress. In nature, intense sweetness meant ripe fruit, which was seasonal, scarce, and worth eating as much of as possible before it rotted. And crunch, this one is subtle. Food scientists call it sensory-specific satiety disruption. When food has a texture that registers as novel and stimulating, the brain delays the fullness signal. It keeps eating. In nature, crunchy food often meant fresh food, live food, food with intact nutritional value. The crunch meant it hadn't been sitting in the sun for 3 days. Ultra-processed food engineers all of these simultaneously. It is not accidental. The industry has spent billions of dollars understanding exactly which combinations of texture, taste, and caloric density override the satiety system, the system that is supposed to tell you to stop eating. And this is the problem. Your brain, the brain that grew large enough to build cities and write music and wonder about its own existence, the brain that runs on 20% of your body's energy, the brain that required 1 million years of cooked food to become what it is, that brain cannot tell the difference between a piece of roasted game meat at the edge of a prehistoric wildfire and a bag of Doritos. Both arrive pre-processed, both are calorie-dense, both trigger the ancient reward signal that says this is the right food, at the right moment, eat as much as you can. Think about the last time you opened something. Chips, crackers, a chocolate bar, something in a foil wrapper with bright colors on the packaging. Think about your intention when you opened it. One serving, a few pieces, just a taste. Think about what actually happened. Then, you are on the African savanna. It has not rained in 11 days. The tubers are depleted. 3 members of your group are sick. You find, at the edge of yesterday's wildfire, a scorched animal carcass still warm from the embers. Your brain floods with dopamine. You eat until there is nothing left. You do not stop until the food is gone. Stopping would be irrational. There is no refrigerator. There is no tomorrow's delivery. There is only this, now, and the ancient instruction to take all of it while it exists. Now, you are on a couch. It is a Tuesday. You are not hungry. The bag is on your lap, and your hand is moving from bag to mouth with a regularity that is almost mechanical. The same dopamine, the same instruction, the same inability to stop until the food is gone, because the brain that learned to eat everything available, while it was available, is the brain inside your skull right now. You are not weak. You are not undisciplined. You are running an ancient program that was written for a world that no longer exists. The program worked. It worked for 1,000,000 years. It built the brain you are using right now to understand that the program is running. Here's what most people miss. Remember the open loop from the beginning. The single decision that changed the shape of the human skull. This is it. Not a deliberate invention. Not a moment of genius. A hungry hominin at the edge of something burning, eating meat that the fire had already changed. That moment set in motion a biological reorganization that took hundreds of thousands of years to complete. Smaller gut, larger brain, weaker jaw, bigger prefrontal cortex. The capacity for language, planning, abstract thought, and eventually the capacity to engineer food so precisely that the system built to reward cooking would be hijacked by things that are technically food, but are, in a meaningful biological sense, something else entirely. The fire got inside us, and then we learned to carry it with us, and then we learned to sell it back to ourselves, packaged, optimized, and specifically designed to keep the ancient brain asking for more. None of this is an argument for eating differently. That is not what this is. This is an attempt to give you the accurate frame for what you are and what food is, and why the relationship between you and food has the particular texture it has. Pull of it, the difficulty of it, the way it can feel like it is slightly outside your control even when you know, intellectually, exactly what is happening. You are an animal built by fire. Your brain exists because of cooking. The size of the prefrontal cortex you are using right now to think about this, to follow this argument, to feel the slight unease of recognition, that organ grew in response to a caloric surplus that could only exist because someone 1,000,000 years ago did not run from the fire. The industry that produces ultra-processed food did not create a vulnerability in you. They found one, a very old one built into the deepest layer of the reward system, below conscious access, below willpower, below everything the prefrontal cortex can override on a Tuesday night when you are tired and the wrapper is already open. If you found something in this that felt true, something that clicked, there is more of this kind of thinking here. Not self-help, not optimization. Just the accurate story of what we are and why we do what we do, told as honestly as possible. That is all this channel has ever tried to do. The microwave beeps. You take the food out. You eat it standing at the counter, in the dark, not quite sure why you came down here in the first place. Your ancestor, 1,000,000 years ago, stood at the edge of a fire and felt exactly this. The pull without a name. The certainty, somewhere below thought, that the warm thing in front of them was exactly what they needed. They were right. It kept them alive long enough to become you. Every time you eat something you didn't have to hunt, you are living off a loan your ancestors took out 1,000,000 years ago, and the interest is everything modern food does to you.